We are in this panel focused on the future. We will be wrapping up what we have heard. We will be drawing some conclusions, and we will be charting the pathway, kind of a roadmap, what needs to be done first. In this endeavor, we'll talk with our stakeholders from different organizations who all represent part of this puzzle and can offer part of the solution. First, I would like to announce my dear colleague, Stevan Vujosinovic. He's Executive Director of REST Foundation, but he's also leader of the regional project that is supported by Austrian government that is dealing with challenges of possible mass replacement or change-out scheme for massive replacement of old efficient heating devices and trying to design solutions, policy solutions, governance solutions, social solutions for heating that is based on the concept of net zero. So I would first kindly ask Stevan to share his observations and findings from this project that will serve as a framework for the recommendations for all of us, what needs to be done as a first step and the priority in the next year.
Thank you, Jasminka. I will, first of all, try to connect my introductory contribution to what has been said in the morning session. We heard that there are many angles and dimensions of the challenge ahead of us. One dimension that has featured heavily in our own research project, which attempts to build a knowledge base for informed decision-making in the future, is basically making sure that the perspective of the users of wood-fired or solid fuel-fired stoves is also integrated into the design of measures aimed at improving the situation. So we conducted an opinion survey across all 6 markets in our region, the so-called Western Balkans 6. And I will begin by supplying some information that hopefully builds a picture about the current level of understanding, motivations, and readiness for the proposed improvements or investments into upgraded devices in the future. So by way of introducing our sort of typical customer in the region, I should perhaps say that only 1 in 4 on average users of these devices in the Western Balkans have never changed their device. That's an interesting statistic to start with. So actually there's a lot of people who have absolutely no experience at all in evaluating, making informed investment decisions about upgrading their devices. So that's one starting point, just to illustrate the size of the challenge ahead of us. We also heard that on average, obviously these numbers vary from one market to the next, but on average, somewhere between 50 and 70% of users actually do not want to change their device. This is people who use solid fuel or wood-fired devices, which are obviously not eco-design compliant devices, the least efficient, the most polluting ones, the ones that are the primary focus of the research project and obviously of our joint efforts to clean up the air that we all breathe together. So between 50 and 70% are actually people who say they don't want to change their device. In spite of the fact that they say that they drastically reduce the living area in their household, which they heat in winter, in spite of the fact that they spend more time even sleeping in the parts of their households with the limited surface area which is heated during the winter, in spite of the fact that they sometimes say they struggle to invest in insulation, etc., actually, for most of these people, they actually articulate that they're happy with the quality of their heating or with the value provision to them which is given by their current device. To sort of flip the coin a little bit, I said how many people don't want to change their device right now. I should also say that around or up to 20% of users actually say clearly that they are ready and willing to change their device now. That's kind of both optimistic and kind of, it would be easy to say, oh, wouldn't it be great to have more people? But in actual fact, when you square this against the available support schemes and mechanisms and budget, you actually kind of wonder whether more people willing to participate in these schemes would actually have the benefit of being supported, because our current level of funding is just not enough. One other reason, which is one other kind of view which kind of illustrates, I hesitate to call this skepticism, but points a future sort of market development effort in a given direction, is also the fact that they actually don't listen to us. When I say us, they don't listen to us in the civil society. They don't listen to local advisors, energy managers, local government officials. They don't listen to, actually, even the device manufacturers are not the first people they look for to learn more about, options and ideas for change. The main source of information, the main place where they seek understanding and help in making up their minds about these decisions is actually friends and families and immediate neighbors. They want to see new devices perform with the people they trust. So this is like word of mouth is the number one communications medium, channel, however you want to call it. They will wait until they have a trusted source, share information on the experience of using new devices. Again, another piece of information, another angle that kind of reinforces this particular view is this. We heard, and we all have through a variety of different angles that we approach this topic from. We know about the health impacts, we know about the climate impacts, we know about the air pollution impacts, we know about the efficiency of devices, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But when you ask the actual users, the number one motivator or the number one dimension that helps them or determines their minds on how to perceive an idea of upgrading their device is the ease and comfort of using the device. In actual fact, those people who want to change the device are, obviously this is a generalization rather than going to individual statistics per every market, but most of these people spend, in their own opinion, far too much time harvesting firewoods, transporting firewoods, making sure that it's properly dried. There is a need for storage, chopping, processing before its use. And obviously there's a whole bunch of other inconvenient aspects of burning firewood, which also happen within the households, ash disposal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's all a bit too much of an effort for those people willing and being interested in replacement options. Obviously, there are many other useful pieces of advice that come from these surveys, such as the need to improve the level of knowledge and understanding, not just amongst the users of wood-fired devices, but also amongst many other stakeholders. They don't get to hear from their general practitioners, from their health services providers about the potential dangers of indoor air pollution. They don't get to hear from anyone in their community, from the family members, anyone about the fact that the upfront investment is actually, yes, it's more of a hurdle at the beginning, but actually they make savings in terms of maintenance and fuel use afterwards. So actually they don't understand, that beyond the first hurdle, which is the investment itself, that all the other hurdles appear to be kind of lower and lower, and they don't get that kind of advice from the channels that they trust and have access to. Another interesting statistic is that for great many people, percentages vary, but I'd say half of users actually have doubts whether they can afford anything. So they even doubt whether they can afford the devices that we actually want to phase out of the market or send into retirement, as it were. Even the devices with the least efficiency, with the cheapest ones on the market, are something that many perceive as beyond their reach. Having said that, for the next sort of group of users who are able to pay, on average, if the entire Western Balkan market was a single market, with say somewhere between 250 and 300 euros per device for a new device, it will be an interesting note to take on the fact that whilst we are discussing the way forward, every year existing users continue to buy across Western Balkans the total of more than 130,000 new devices, which are, again, devices we are in fact looking to either upgrade or replace or phase out altogether. Devices which are the cheapest, but which are the least performing in terms of efficiency, in terms of emission standards, in terms of providing both heat and health. I'm trying to translate the slogan that I heard this morning in one of the previous panels, in making sure that we are keeping both warm and healthy. So more than 130,000 pieces are being sold. This is not the entire solid fuel market. There are also, this number does not include the sales of, for instance, pellet devices, the more efficient alternatives. This number focuses only on the cheapest, least efficient devices, which we hope to upgrade into something that's not just more acceptable, but acceptable, let's put it that way. Something that is able to change the nature of this game for an estimated 3 million households across the region. So 131,000 plus in excess of these pieces. And the next piece of information is that we combined between us, we pay every year more than close to 40 million euros. So there is already, expenditure, which I'm kind of, just for the purpose of starting an argument, of challenging all of us to think about this. This is money going in the other direction. So we say that this is a huge challenge, that people can't afford, more sophisticated devices. But even those who can afford something actually continue to invest in the past, rather than they end up unwittingly investing into staying in a situation which kind of contributes to the forces that across our region have the common denominator of reinforcing energy poverty. So close to 40 million a year continue going in the other direction every year. I say this because there's also the question of time. Obviously, time will be needed to develop policies, to develop finance mechanisms, to develop the kind of partnerships that have the chance of being effective, reducing investment risks, allowing these difficult to reach customers to access these markets and upgrade their devices. But I wanted to make this point. The longer we wait, the more money goes the other way. So actually, there's not a prospect of us unwittingly leaving people behind. Actually, that's happening right now. That actually, a lot of people, because if you think about it, these investments are being made for a number of years to come. So this is not something that will go. These devices will continue to be used for anything between 5 and 10 years. There will be people saying, well, I just got my new device. I'm not going to be in the market for a new replacement for at least 5 to 10 years now. So the reason I reiterate this, and this is why I keep repeating these numbers, more than 130, close to 140,000 devices every year, close to 40 million. We were discussing internally about, how much time would be possible to budget for a phased upgrade of the entire market. Is 5 years enough? Is 7 years enough? Shall we set the date of 2030 to have some kind of a horizon? And I want to just reiterate with these numbers that the clock is ticking, but also the money is flowing in the other direction. I think that will be enough for just the introduction. And if you don't want to risk me repeating these numbers again, I'll better stop here and allow other contributors to participate.
Yeah. Thank you, Stefan. This is more than enough, but it's very overwhelming, robust, and amazing evidence that you just presented. That is also wrapped around very, very strong messages. I try to write them down and make a list of what aspects of replacement schemes we need to take into account. And I have almost 10 items here on my list, which is not only technical, but also social, ecological, even convenience, health, lock-in, money going in the wrong direction, which is basically waste of money, waste of time, waste in terms of efficiency, affordability aspect. You convinced us that this is one of the most pressing issues at the Western Balkans to even start energy transition. You mentioned the known aspect of, or principle of leaving no one behind. And when we say leave no one behind...
Vehicle engines, it was a phased approach, but at some stage there was a date. At some stage we said from this date onwards, vehicles with polluting engines can no longer be admitted to these markets. The reason I put forward the idea of putting a date as a backbone of a good plan is basically to say that whilst this is a sophisticated, multifaceted, multidimensional challenge, we actually know that there is one type of devices that has no future. And we really shouldn't, the fact that there's all this other analysis shouldn't lead us into analysis paralysis. We need to get rid of the most polluting device. Some people call it smederevas. I'll call it smoky for the benefit of people who don't use the same terminology. Smoky is out. We can't take the smokies into the future. When do we and how do we get it? A good plan has to start with some idea about the level of ambition in terms of pace. I come back to the question of pace. Yes, it's going to be challenging, but hey, we can do something similar to what has happened in the attempts to and efforts to phase out coal as well. We know it's a challenge, but then we invite everybody who's involved and affected into such fora as just transition commissions, into national advisory bodies for a transition that makes sure that nobody's left behind, that people are not hurt beyond a reasonable measure in any kind of shape or form. So I think setting a smoky phase-out date actually maybe because I come from a communications background, but it sends a message also to other stakeholders in other sectors who need to set the phase-out date, including for coal combustion across our region. So that would be one thing. When you think about the date, how quickly, what will be feasible? It's early to say. We need to have a conversation with all the stakeholders. But there is one note again. I stress pace again. Just a kind of a comment on many of the previous contributions. We have these piecemeal interventions. We have, a few million there, a public call there, here and there. What this does is already raise the prices of insulation. Like even if I'm not looking for, for a subsidy, even if I want to, refurbish my own house, all these kind of even discussions have market repercussions. What we know in this region is that when it comes to transition, and we know this from all the transitions we've been through, the longer you drag them on, the more painful, the more costly they become, the less clarity they introduce into the market, and the more difficult they become to introduce. So let's have pace. Let's have ambition, like we argue for ambition everywhere else. Let's have ambition in our plans to phase out the smokies. Second message or second category is finance. Clearly, we heard from many contributors throughout the day. Most of these existing mechanisms are kind of linear in how they approach the topic. They fail to appreciate the diversity of customers that need to be supported. If we were working in a private company, we'd do market segmentation. We'd say, okay, there's this market, there's that market. We would treat different segments differently. We would design products and services which actually cater to the specific needs of individual markets. With this in mind, I'm actually saying that even though, again, this is something that should be a talking point for a continued conversation, we don't have to have, all subsidy schemes support 50%. We can actually discriminate. We can we can send messages to the market without actually excluding devices. We can say, we can introduce a hierarchy of technologies, for instance. We can say we'll subsidize more, we'll set aside more funding for more sophisticated devices. If we know that wood is going to continue to feature as a fuel for many years and decades to come, does it pay for us to ignore this and let people continue to burn this in inefficient devices? No. We should have more modern devices playing the role that they can play according to a standard that we set ourselves with our policy of the minimum efficiency and the emission standards. There are other ways of organizing such hierarchies, as I put them, or segmenting the market. We can introduce a hierarchy of needs. For some categories of users, 50% is just not enough. They can't bridge that gap. They can't jump that high for the first hurdle. We'll need to lower that hurdle. We can have specific groups of customers qualify for even 100%. We know that it actually pays in terms of the benefits of both more efficient fuel use, of helping people out of situation of energy poverty. For others, I recently was in the market for a new device when I was refurbishing my own flat. I shouldn't be, I was able to afford a modern device without, subsidies. So there needs to be a segmentation. There can be ways of informed market segmentation, which direct limited resources to those who need them most. There are other ways of segmenting the market. For many local municipalities, this has been a reactive exercise. They've been reacting to cries for action that originate from public distress about some appalling air pollution. So they try to do whatever they can. You can even discriminate geographically according to your air pollution maps. You can have certain parts of, urban, densely populated areas excluding any kind of burning from a given date according to your phase-out plan. And then you can have, more flexible phase-out dates for other less densely populated areas, etc. So my point being, when you design financial support products, we should actually speak to banking professionals to get ideas on how they segment the market and design products, including those for those hardest to reach customers. We have a situation where many of these products actually exclude many people from participating, not just according to income, but also according to the fact that they live in homes which were constructed without building permits, that they owe money for local taxes, etc., etc., etc. If they weren't in energy poverty, they wouldn't be in this trouble. So if we just choose to accept that, these are customers and they are always right and they deserve to be served rather than judged, then I think we're already making headway towards having a diversified range of products when it comes to support schemes. And my last point, one is policy. We need a plan. We need a group to support the implementation of that plan and have all the voices represented in that plan. We need diversified finance products. And we need, lastly, something that I will call standardized know-how and process management at national level, or basically getting everything that we can standardize at national levels, so that our special forces in implementing this change, who are the limited number of troops that we have at municipal government level, are given the best chance of success. All this rising interest, all these, increasing financial flows towards a variety of different schemes, from energy efficiency to replacing, updating these devices, to a whole bunch of other spheres that will be implemented now and over the coming years. At the end of the day, most of this burden to administer this will fall onto people who work in local governments. And we have to appreciate, when you talked about absorption capacity, that these guys need help, and they can be helped. They don't have to design everything themselves for every single municipality in which we do things. There is a strong role to play for either the policy implementation, the smoky phase-out commission group at a government ministry level, to standardize processes, to design communication and awareness campaigns, to design outreach programs and plans, so that the people on the ground, the front office of our shared enterprise, can actually focus on making sure that they are as efficient as they can be in administering these schemes. In another kind of way of putting this last step to everybody in this panel, it's basically making sure that we act as a kind of strong back office support to our front office people who will be asked to do more and more as we move on. So let's have a plan. Let's have a diversified range of support mechanisms which appreciates the diversified nature of needs in our target market or target users. And finally, let's have an organization of workload which relieves special troops on the ground, our front office, of everything other than actually efficient, informed, effective administration of these programs in a way which doesn't leave these hard-to-reach customers outside, but actually allows those most in need to participate as well.
Thank you, Stefan. You just presented the elements of the future program, and the future is here. It's 2022. And I would like to show you one video now, because you also mentioned the capacities of local self-government. So I think video is telling, so we can...
Implementation of this project, we have basically initiated the creation of something that I call almost like a community of practitioners across the Western Balkans. And we speak to people in a range of workshops and events, and we exchange information, and we find that at local level especially, people who are faced with practical challenges in implementing all these ideas in practice find great value in being able to speak to fellow energy managers, fellow local authority officials, anywhere within the region. So this comes up time and time again, and the reason I bring this up is because I didn't put it in one of the three segments. There is also the need to make sure, hopefully, that we can perhaps do something that we did with the Network of Good Energy, where we, in Serbia, initiated and facilitated for many years this mutual support group for professionals at local level who are involved in administering all this. I think it's time also to have a network of good energy for the Western Balkans, rather than have that as a single initiative here. We find that colleagues from Tuzla, Pljevlja, and Skopje speak to each other about similar challenges, and there is really no need why they shouldn't be in regular touch. So let's have a conversation which is not just at national level, but continue this to make sure that it's high on the policy agenda in the weeks and months to come, in a way which also integrates a regional view rather than having these piecemeal interventions in individual markets. I think I would stop at that.
Thank you, Stefan. I think we reached the end of our panel, concluding panel. Thank you all for your valuable contributions, for your ideas and concrete proposals. I think we all now better understand what we need to do next, and let's keep the region on the move. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.